you see how small that guy is compared to the wave. Well, I don't think I've ridden a wave that big, maybe half that size. Because you know the way they count waves in Hawaii? They count from the back. And the back of the wave is half the size of what the front is. But this is called pipeline. This is where this wave is. And the reason that they call it pipeline, can you imagine why they call it the pipeline? Because it's like a pipe. It just throws way over. And the goal of the surfer, of course, is getting as far deep in that pipe as possible and make it out alive. And the thing that people don't understand is that at pipeline, it's very shallow. And people that wipe out, you know what wipe out is, right? You know, crash. And they get drugged underneath the cavern. There's caverns in here, and they get stuck under there and they die. Why do people do things like that? You know, that's really a small wave comparing to the big waves that Ace Cool surfed way out. He gets towed out with a jet ski, and he has to have some kind of apparatus where he has a breather. Because when you get pounded by a wave like that, you can't breathe because you're under the water for a long time. But you know, in order to do something like that, you have to have a little bit of faith to be able to do something like that. This, I think, is more than faith. I think it's crazy. But you hear about all different kinds of crazy people. You know, they do skydiving, right? To me, I don't know if I would ever jump out of the plane, because I know if your parachute doesn't on. If you got one in the front and one in the back, you know, the spare one. What if they both don't work? But you actually have to place your faith that the parachute is going to open, right?
Right.
Well, what about, you know, when I take those kids over to Young Life camps, like that one over there, and we have this thing called zip lining, and you're up on a hill here, on the side of the hill, and it goes down and you land into the water. How many of you went zip lining before? Anybody? Isn't that fun? Huh?
No, I don't like heights.
You don't like heights? So why did you do it then?
It was a dare.
It was a dare. And you couldn't back up because you watch it. So the thing is that, why would anybody get strapped up on this cable and think that they're going to survive that thing going down? Little cuckoo? Crazy. What are some other sports, like motorcycle, motocross, right? We had right above, on a hill behind us, we had a motocross, and I see these people, they fly into the air, they do these somersaults, and then they come back down. But you know what? In order to be that good, to be able to do that, you know what you have to do? Guess what happens during practice? Yeah. I remember the old days when they just had a helmet on. Now they got these padded gears and everything like that. And you know skateboarders that come down and then they do that, like, they fly in the air. And those skiers, you know, the ones that come down and they fly up in the air and they do somersaults and come back down like that. I mean, each one of those people have to have faith that they will come out of the other end whole. So the question I want to ask you today is, where do you place your faith? And the thing that I see a lot is that society places their faith on things that really you shouldn't place your faith in. I mean, how many of you have placed your faith in your government in the past? I'm talking about the past now. That the system will work, that our president will do what is best for their people. Well, what happens when you place your faith in the government to be able to take care of you, and the government does what they're doing today? I mean, I just heard, I read something on the internet that they spent, like millions of dollars sending the money to someplace like Colombia so that they can have this ballroom dance for the LGBTQA. It's getting longer and longer. That's your and my tax dollars going for that purpose over there, and it's not even in our own country. Now, to me, that is called insanity. Wouldn't you agree? When we are over $30 trillion, now I don't know if any of you understand trillion dollars. It's going to take, if we only spent what we brought in, we still would not get out of debt in our lifetime. Did you know that? How many of you knew that? If you knew that, raise your hand. And so the little kids, they don't have a future. And the only thing that can happen is we have to place our faith in something else other than our government. You remember back in the Israelites, they got disappointed because, they looked around, everybody had kings, and they said, we want our own king. And so God said, you want your own king? Sure, I'll give you a king. Now, he was a godly man first, so, he was handsome, he was a head taller than everybody else. And he was a righteous man at first. But guess what happens when you're in charge, on the top position? Right? And he felt like, I'm the boss. Nobody can tell me what to do. Not even God. And God told the people that, you know what's going to happen when you have a king? He's going to take 1/10 of everything you have, your money, your slaves, your crop, everything. Where does the tithe belong? It belongs to God. You see, the thing that God did is he said, 1/10, only 1/10, that's the bare minimum. If you trust me and have faith in me, you will give me what I ask for. 1/10. So how much should you give? There used to be a Bible study that we did way back, and it was called the Treasured Principle. And the sad thing is, most people don't even give 1/10. But he says that, try it. And in Malachi it also says, test me in this, to see that I will not open the floodgates of heaven and pour out to you a blessing more than you can understand or handle. If God said it, do you think it's true? Yeah. Why, if it's true, don't we submit to the truth and have faith that God will provide everything you need? We trust Him. You see, faith has to have connection with our trust, a belief system, right? And if we don't understand that, because a lot of times people say, well, I'm a man of faith, or I'm a woman of faith, but if you talk to them, you find out that they don't have any faith at all. In fact, well, actually, they do have faith. Their faith is on their own ability to handle things, handle situations. You know what I'm talking about? How many of you have been there? You know? And where does that get you? Do you know what the circumstances, what the future holds for you? There's been billionaires who had to file bankruptcy. How is it that rich people end up that way? Well, you know what happens? Is they place their faith in their ability to take care of themselves and to have all the goodies. But there's things like the stock market. People place their faith in the stock market, right? And what happens to the stock market? Stock market crashes. How many of you have money in the stocks? Mutual funds, investments, any kind of investments. Because a lot of times your investments has to do with stocks. And you know what? There's a lot of times people have placed all their money into stocks and have lost all of it. You know, it's really interesting because, you know, rich people, and I used to be a financial analyst where I went and helped people look at their income situation, their finances. And you know who are the people that end up to be the most people in more debt? The doctors, lawyers, you know? It's amazing. Because they have to keep up with this image, you know. All the doctors have nice Mercedes-Benz, Ferrari in their car, in the garage. In fact, how many people have nice cars but they can't park their car in the garage because they got too much junk? The thing is that I have seen that people that seem to be wealthy are really not wealthy at all. Because it doesn't matter how much money you make, it's what you do with the money that you get. How many of you have ever been in debt before? How many of you still in debt? No, Richard.
Still in debt.
You see, the thing is that we feel that we need something. I mean, it used to be in the old days before that plastic thing. My parents, when they needed something, they would save money and then they go buy it when they had the money. The only thing that people took credit on was their house, which was building equity. But nowadays, people buy something and they go upside down. You know what I'm talking about? They owe more money than the thing is worth.
Yeah.
And you can never get out of that unless you just say, I'm going to change my behavior and my spending. And what I'm trying to get to you is that where is it that you're placing your faith? And the only place that you place your faith that will be fulfilling is when you place your faith in God. And some of you already know about the situation on how I ended up at this building. We were running that Young Life program in Balco. And I felt the Lord telling me that we need to have a presence in our community with a nice big sign that says Young Life on it. And of course, I didn't have money. I had my mortgage payments, my debt. But I had faith that God was going to provide. And so the guy that was selling this building, he said, I'm going to sell it to you cheap, $25,000.
Whoa, wow.
Wow, that's cheap. But you know what? If you don't have the money to pay for it, that's odd.
Yeah.
So I went to the bank and I thought maybe if I mortgaged part of my house, I could use that money to get this building. So I went to the bank and the bank says, well, you don't have enough equity, basically, is what he told me. But I'll lend you the money anyway. You ever heard of the bank? That's not the bank, it's God.
Yeah.
And today, this building is totally paid for.
Yeah.
You know, God gives you a confirmation if you're doing the right thing because He blesses you and He takes care of you. And I want each and every one of you to have that same blessing too. But I can't force it on you. You will have to have faith, believe that God will take care of you if you do it His way. Too many of us want to do it our own way, our own ability, and we think we know what's best. But you know what? God's way doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make sense. When you're looking at, okay, the amount of money you make, and then there's people say, well, do I tithe off my gross or my net? Hey, just tithe. Just give. And see if God will not take care of you. Today I'm totally debt-free. I own my house, I own a rental unit, and I get a bare minimum. I'm so scared. But you know, God, when things happen, all of a sudden money shows up. People say, hey, here's $1,000. And we know that you're doing good things in our community, so we will give you this $1,000. And then the next week, next month, another $400 cash. Another person sent me $400 check. I mean, it's not them. It's God telling them, you need to do this. How many of you experienced that before? Huh? Where God just wants to bless you, but you know what? You don't allow Him to because you don't have faith. You don't place your faith in Him. Okay. Who wants to read that? Can you read it?
Unseen but
Faith is unseen but felt.
faith is strengthened when we feel we have none. Faith is hope when all seems lost.
Okay. Here's this one.
Faith is trusting in God even when it doesn't make sense, even when we don't understand. Have faith that things will work out. Maybe not how you planned, but how it's meant to be. Faith without risk, there is no faith, and the greater the risk, the greater the faith.
That's Soren Kierkegaard, an existentialist. An existentialist is they think that faith is a blind leap. That means you're just reaching out and you wanting to grasp on something and you hope that you got the right thing that you believe in. That's what he said Christianity is, a blind leap. And I hope I got the right God. I hope I got the right faith. That's not what Christianity is all about. Christianity is based on evidence. In fact, there's more evidence, tons more evidence that God exists than evidence that says He doesn't exist. Take a look at yourself. Now, some of you may not have a low self-esteem and say, well, I don't, God created me ugly. No, God doesn't create any ugliness. Okay? Just put your hand out. Everybody put your hand out like this, okay? And then do this. Now, tell me, how were you able to do that? It just happened, right? That through a process of one cell animal separated, became two and three, and became a fish and an alligator called little lamb, and eventually I'll be a monkey's uncle. Now it takes more faith to believe in that than to believe that God made it